Hello there. Welcome back. As many of you know, I've done a number of videos recently regarding the new Tab Mini C from Boox. And one of the interesting things that the conversations that have been taking place in the comments is, and on Reddit, are people asking why I had selected ultra fast as the refresh rate setting for all my demonstrations with the Mini C. And part of that stems with the fact that while there are 5 refresh rate settings available either in the Mini C or for the Boox Tab Ultra C for that matter, and those go from HD to balanced, fast, ultra fast, and regal. So 5 options for most apps. Sometimes regal's dropped and there's actually 4, but 4 to 5. I actually think there's only really 2 that are effectively different from each other. So I think HD and Regal look one way and function one way, and I think that the remaining 3, Balanced Fast and Ultra Fast, function another. I don't see differences within those 2 groups. Now, between the groups, I do see differences. I can tell the difference between an HD and a balance mode, or a regal and an ultra fast mode. And I tend to like this group better, and that's why I picked ultra fast. In other words, I picked ultra fast randomly among the 3 refresh rate settings because I don't think there's much of a difference between them. Well, a number of people disagree with that, and they do see differences, but I don't. So I thought it might be fun actually to do a little bit of a quiz. And I'm going to run through 3 demonstrations in this video, and we're going to see if you can tell the difference between those 5 refresh rate settings. Now, I'm not necessarily saying there are no differences. I'm just saying that I can't see them. And in fact, I'm sure there are differences. But we'll have some fun with it, and we'll see if you can see the differences as well. And then we'll wrap it up and talk about what all of this means. So that should be kind of fun and exciting. Then after we go through that demonstration, I'll go ahead and give some thoughts on battery life. Lots of questions around battery life that I've really kind of been a little bit coy on answering. So I'll explain why, and I'll give some anecdotal evidence about what the battery life is for the Mini C. And then we'll kind of wrap up with my last thoughts on the case. I talked about the case for the Mini C in the first of my 3-part series. And that was really more of an unboxing / first impressions. I have some additional thoughts I wanted to share about that now that I've had some time to work with it. So that's what this video is about. I hope it's fun. Let's get into it. Okay, so before we start actually doing the demonstrations, let me lay the groundwork for it and talk about how this is going to work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to set each app and we're going to go through 3 different demonstrations. So each of those 3 apps, I'm going to set up exactly the same each time. I'm going to set the system refresh rate to 0. So that way that's not impacting the results. It's only the selected refresh rate that matters. I'm going to refresh the page prior to shooting the video. So you'll start with a clean slate, and then we'll see how it performs from there. Again, I'm thinking of things in 2 groups. So the first 2 examples in each demonstration is going to be some combination of HD and Regal. We're not sure which. And then the last 3 is going to be some sort of combination of balanced, fast, and ultra fast. And again, not sure which. Okay. At the end of each demonstration, I'll give the results. So we'll do the first demonstration. I'll tell you what each one was. And then you can use that information to maybe inform how you consider the second demonstration, and then you'll have the 2 to see if that improves your ability to identify the refresh rate in the third demonstration. Finally, a couple points. Number 1 is that the camera and the screen are roughly 10 to 11 inches apart from each other. And I mention that because that's going to be closer than you're normally going to use these devices. So I wanted to kind of zoom in a little bit. But for most of us, we'll hold it kind of half arm's length away as we're reading, or maybe we'll have it propped on the table. And that distance from the device to the eye will, for many of us, be farther away than what we're measuring here. So just something to keep in mind. And finally, I want to introduce this scoreboard. And this is basically how the points will add up. So there's a possibility of anywhere from 0 to 15 points, depending on how well you do. And these are the categories I've kind of lumped together. If I did this, my guess would be that I would probably fall at 5 or 6 points. That's just my guess. So which is right there in the middle. We'll see how you do. And hopefully you can put that into the comments, and then we can have a dialogue and conversation about that. So I think that would be fun. Okay, let's go ahead and then get into the first demonstration. So the first demonstration is to my go-to e-reading app, which is Kobo. And basically what we're going to do in each of the 5 scenarios is we're going to start at the same place. I'm going to advance the page 5 times. And at the end of that, I'm going to tap on the screen so you can see some of Kobo's UI. So here are the things that you're going to focus on. The first thing that you'll focus on, and probably the predominant thing, is how crisp is the text. So that's the primary area of focus. As we flip through the pages, you might want to look for ghosting. I think ghosting will be very minimal and intermittent when it does occur. So I don't expect there to be a lot of ghosting, if any, visible. So that's a minor point. But the third thing you want to focus on is look at the header. You will see differences in the pixel density of the header. So those are 3 areas to focus on as we go through these demonstrations. All right, good luck. Let's do it. This is demonstration number 1. Is this HD or Regal? This is demonstration number 2. Is this HD or Regal? This is demonstration number 3. Is this balanced, fast, or ultra fast? This is demonstration number 4. Is this balanced, fast, or ultra fast? This is demonstration number 5. Is this balanced, fast, or ultra fast? Okay, so that was our first demonstration, and now I want to share with you the results. The first example was Regal in action. The second example was HD. The third example was fast. The fourth was ultra fast. And of course, that means the fifth, therefore, was balanced. How'd you do? You could have gotten anywhere between 0 to 5 points at this point, and hopefully you have a sense now of how the refresh rates differ. I'm sure there was a noticeable difference between the second and the third examples because we were going from one group to the other, but did you see the differences within the groups? Okay, with that in mind, let's move on to our next demonstration. So for our second demonstration, we're going to use Google Photos, and this is the image that we're going to be looking at. Of course, this is the actual source image, which is taken from my camera phone, so it's a high definition image. It's going to look a lot better than the images we're going to see on the device, but that's okay. I just wanted you to be aware of what the original was for reference. Now there's 2 things I think are worth focusing on. The first thing you'll look at is just look at the bridge itself, especially in maybe the first part of it that's just before us. And just take a look at the general color and the general level of detail, particularly in the gaps between the boards. So that's an area that I think is worth focusing on as we go through the images. And the other thing to focus on is look at the step just before the bridge itself. If you look at the left side of that step, you'll notice that the wood is kind of a gray color, and then maybe about a quarter or maybe even a fifth in, it transitions into more of a brown, and it does that all the way to the right side, which then goes back to a gray color. So it's interesting to focus on that particular detail as we go through the images. For sure, you're going to see a difference between the first group and the second group for that particular step, as well as the bridge itself. But can you see differences in the details within each group? Let's find out. This is demonstration number 1. Is this HD or Regal? This is demonstration number 2. Is this HD or Regal? This is demonstration number 3. Is this balanced, fast, or ultra fast? This is demonstration number 4. Is this balanced, fast, or ultra fast? This is demonstration number 5. Is this balanced, fast, or ultra fast? Okay, so that concludes our second demonstration. Let's see how you did. The first example was HD. The second was Regal. The third was ultra fast. The fourth was fast. And the fifth was balanced. All right, at this point, you can have anywhere between 0 and 10 points. So we're coming along and going into our final demonstration. So let's see how you do. So the third demonstration is something a little bit different. This is looking at Flipster, and in this particular case, I've gone into a magazine, Consumer Reports, and I've basically zeroed in on a particular page. So what we're going to be measuring in this case is how the images and text scroll as I go from the top to the bottom of the page. Now, one quick note, the app is a little bit quirky and I haven't quite figured out how to scroll it effectively, so sometimes it snaps back into place. That's user error. It has nothing to do with the refresh rate, so don't focus on that. Just focus on changes to the image and the text as it scrolls and any type of ghosting that might be present, and look for differences like that, and I will see you at the end of the demonstration. This is demonstration number 1. Is this HD or Regal? This is demonstration number 2. Is this HD or Regal? This is demonstration number 3. Is this balanced, fast, or ultra fast? This is demonstration number 4. Is this balanced, fast, or ultra fast? This is demonstration number 5. Is this balanced, fast, or ultra fast? So that concludes our third demonstration. Let's see how you did. The first example was HD in action. The second was Regal. The third balanced. The fourth ultra fast, and the fifth was fast. All right, so now you can tally up your numbers. As a reminder, here is the scorecard, so you can see how you did. Please share your results in the comments, both your points, as well as if you could see differences, if you could mention those, that might be helpful for other people, and certainly for myself to see what differences you were able to observe. I do want to say that this, while kind of a fun exercise, and I think useful, and I'll get to that in just a second, is not the end of the question about whether there are differences within the refresh rates. There were a number of things we didn't measure. We didn't measure, for example, the performance of video. We didn't mention the performance of ghosting on a black background. The white backgrounds actually do a really good job of hiding a lot of the ghosting that might be present. Black backgrounds actually highlight the ghosting really well, or poorly, depending on your perspective. And so, for example, in comics that sometimes have black bars, you see a lot of ghosting there. Or Discord is an app that by default has a dark theme. You can see a lot of ghosting. It's very present. And so maybe there are differences between how that ghosting looks between the different settings. And the last thing, and something I have no sense of yet, but maybe there's a difference between battery drain between the different settings. So this doesn't ultimately kind of answer the question about whether there's differences or not, but it does inform us around tendencies. So for example, let's say you're like me and you really couldn't see a difference between the different refresh modes within the two groups. Well, that actually simplifies things, right? Because now when you go into an app, instead of saying, well, which of the 5 should I be using here? Maybe you're just like, do I use HD or do I use balanced? You just pick one from each group, and whichever one you like, you just go with it. So instead of trying 5 different options in a given app, maybe you're now focused down to 2. And by the way, just so you know, the way that Boox works is it has a different, how you set the refresh rate in each app is unique to that app, and it remembers that. So if you go into Kobo and decide, well, I want to use fast for Kobo, every time you go into Kobo, it'll go into fast, regardless of what your refresh settings are for the UI or for other apps. So that's nice. But even if you did see a difference between the refresh rates, well, that simplifies things too, because now you have a sense of, well, generally I liked fast better, and so that becomes your default, and you might know under which circumstances you would go to some of the other refresh rates as well. So I hope that in addition to being fun, this also kind of makes things a little bit easier and a little more accessible in working with the Boox UI, which can get a little bit distant in all the complexity and functionality that's there. So hopefully this was fun and useful. But anyway, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your feedback, and I'd love to see how everyone did. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is around battery life. And there were a lot of questions from people asking, how's the battery life? And in one of my previous videos, I did measure standby time, which is fairly easy to measure, and I'm relatively confident that it's accurate. I mean, there's probably a margin of error there, but it's generally speaking probably what you'll experience if you have the device. But a lot of people were really focused not on the battery drain during standby, but what's the battery drain during use? And this is something that I actually haven't really answered, and I've kind of been avoiding it to some degree. And the reason why is because battery drain actually is a really complicated thing that's very dependent on a number of factors. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you a spreadsheet that I'm tracking in order to get a better sense of what battery drain is. I'll share my anecdotes, but you'll also get a sense of why this is a complicated question to answer based on all the elements that I'm trying to track, all of which impact battery life. So let's head over to my spreadsheet and take a look at that, and we'll get a better sense, but not a complete sense, of what battery drain is like on the Mini C. So here's the spreadsheet I'm using, and I'm taking anecdotal samples, and I'm hoping that over time I'll be able to gather enough information to really have a sense of what the battery drain is like in various use cases and what the impacts of certain elements are. I think this is interesting because you can start to see some of the complexity involved here, right? So, what mode are you in? What's the refresh rate for the system? Is the front lighting on or off? And how high is it? Is Wi-Fi on? all these things could potentially impact battery mode. And you can imagine that creates a lot of potential options and combinations, and that could affect your results. So what you see here on the screen are the 4 samples that I've created thus far. I highlighted Google News in blue just so we can look first at Kobo, and then we'll look at the Google News line. And these are 3 different scenarios for Kobo. And what you'll notice is that, we'll just take the first line as an example. So the first line is, I read for about 31 minutes, didn't have front lighting on, Wi-Fi was shut off because I didn't need it, and the battery indicator didn't change at all. So it started at 60%, ended at 60%. So what I then do is a calculation. I can't tell what fraction of a percent, so I round up. So I say, well, let's assume that I burned 1%. And if I did that, what does that imply in terms of how long I could do that activity on this device? And that implies 52 hours. So Kobo in HD mode, 5-tap refresh on the system setting, no front lighting, no Wi-Fi, implies 52 hours of battery life. The second Kobo I did on balance mode, still had 5-tap on, front lighting was on full, no Wi-Fi, and there I actually saw a 2% decrease. But remember, that's rounding up to 2%. So worst case scenario. And using that assumption, the life drops dramatically to 28 hours. Pretty interesting. And the implication there is it's the front lighting that's driving that battery drain, because that's the biggest change. There was a mode change as well, but the front lighting sticks out to me as the biggest change between the two. And then finally, I did a third anecdote, Kobo balance mode. I turned off the 5-tap refresh, no front lighting, no Wi-Fi, and I got my best battery life of all at around 77 implied hours. So as an e-reader, just reading a simple novel, really excellent battery life, but looks like significant drain with the front lighting on. Then we'll go to an app like Google News, which is a very intensive app. You're scrolling the screen, so a lot of changes to the screen. When you go into various articles, there actually could be videos running, particularly ads. They're running on those. So I did this test. I was in there for about 17 minutes, and it drained about 5%. And that implies a battery life of 6 hours. Dramatically different based on the activity that I'm doing. So as you can tell in the spreadsheet, there's a wide variation in just those 4 samples that I took, depending on the activity I was doing. I'm hoping to build on this and over time get a better sense and hone down what the actual battery life is. But this is part of the reason why it's difficult to simply answer the question, what is the battery life like? Because it's so dependent on what you're doing. And we saw just in these examples a range of 6 hours to 77 based on what was happening. So I'll track this information more over time, and I'll do subsequent videos to talk about this. I'm actually particularly fascinated to see what the front lighting does because I did not expect the drain to be that high. I'm not sure why I had the expectation that I did, but for some reason I thought there would be less drain. And it looks like, no, it's pretty significant. So anyway, so that's partly why I've been a little bit dismissive, not dismissive, but I've been a little bit not so forthcoming with information about battery life. It's because I don't know the answer to it, and I'm having to measure it, and measuring it is a complicated thing. So hopefully that helps put that into a little bit of context. Okay, I want to conclude this video today in talking about the cover for the Mini C. And as you know from the first video where I did a first impressions and kind of unboxing of the device, my initial impressions were really good. And I just want to share 2 other observations I've had since that video. The first thing is that the cover itself, this is a small negative, at least from my perspective. But it's really more of an aesthetic choice on my part. It's a dark gray, as you can see right there. I would have preferred a darker, even darker gray, or maybe even a black. So that's just a minor gripe that I've had that I've kind of noticed since doing the original video. But putting that aside, the other observation I want to make, and this is really more significant in my mind, is that I've actually gone to love this cover even more than I did on the initial impression, and I'll tell you why. When I think of a cover, there's really three things that I'm hoping that cover is going to do. So the first thing, and the easiest thing, and all covers pretty much do this, is just to protect the device, to keep dust off of the device, to give you something you can put the device in as you carry it around. This certainly checks that box, as most covers do. The second thing that I want is I want the cover not to get in the way of the device. Nothing bothers me more than a cover that covers up the device and becomes the center of your focus. I want the cover to have its functionality, but allow the quality and the craftsmanship of the device still stand out. And thankfully, we're entering a time, particularly with magnets, where covers are much simpler. You can just stack it on top of the cover, so you get that functionality, but when you open up the cover, the device really still stands out and still shines. And that's starting to become more and more common, thankfully, and that's certainly present in this device, this cover as well. But the last thing, and this is the key, is that the ideal cover makes the device better. It accentuates the device. Now, of course, this cover has, as a lot of covers do, wake to open and shut off to close. That's not unusual, actually, for e-ink devices. But I'm talking beyond that. I'm talking that the quality of the feel of the cover, the looks of the cover, it's like a mini folio. It just seems to make the device better. It makes me smile when I look at it. And that's rare for a cover. In fact, I'm gonna have to go back to my very first e-reader, which was the PRS 505. I did a whole video on that, a little nostalgia video that you can check out. That was really the last time where I felt the cover made the device better. It wasn't just there for functional purposes, it enhanced the experience. This cover enhances the experience. And again, I can't help but say how amazing that is for a company whose track record on covers has been less than stellar. So I just wanted to reiterate that because I've just grown more and more impressed by this as I've carried it around and as I've used it. And of course, it's easy to pull the device out of the cover as well, which I like to do when I'm reading to kind of shed that weight and hold on to the device. So there's, my minor gripe that I started with is just a little thing that keeps it from perfection. But this is one of the best covers I've ever seen for any electronics device that I've ever had, not just for e-readers. And I just wanted to mention that because while I was impressed in the unpacking video, I'm just much more impressed as I've been using the cover, and I thought that was worth sharing. All right. Well, as always, I hope this video was helpful. As always, my plea, please subscribe if you would. The vision is that I will eventually monetize, and that will allow me to basically bring in funds that I can use to buy devices, which I can then review. And then my plan is those devices that I review, once I'm done with the review, I will raffle off or something to the community of folks that are watching the video. So that's what's in it for me, is that I'll be able to get those funds to be able to review additional devices. And what's in it for you is that you'll see more devices reviewed on this channel, and you'll potentially win a device if all things go well. Now, having said that, I don't expect to monetize this year. I'm kind of on a path to monetize hopefully next year if all things go well. Who knows? So it's not something happening around the corner. I'm still going to keep making videos whether I monetize or not, but I think it would be helpful if we did, so please do so. I'd be much appreciated. Thank you very much. I love your comments. As always, I try to reply to as many as possible, and I'm definitely looking forward to how you guys did on the quiz, so I'm pretty excited to see that. Thank you very much. I hope you guys have a great day.